and Erie student athletes. He's won multiple awards from Emmys to APs, but his talent is giving a story a pulse, and that's not easy to do. To let a story breathe, and that's not easy to do. Television can be a pretty easy business if you let the pictures and the audio tell the story, and no one ever did it better than him. And he did it at the highest level. Please welcome, for induction into the Erie Metro Hall of Fame, Mr. Mike Gallagher.
So earlier today, Andy Cicini calls and says, hey, I know you have good stories, so I'm going to defer some of my time to you.
I didn't get that.
Well, that ship has sailed. But I will try to stick within the limits. And I go back to 2005 when I had the good fortune of being Dan Marino's personal photographer for his induction to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And it's a 4-day weekend, and on the last day it's a Monday night football game. They introduced the inductees at center of the field, and at that time Danny's leaving right from there to get to a party in Pittsburgh. Well, Joe Corrigan, the director of the Hall of Fame, comes to the center of the field and says, Dan, the bust is now in place over where it will be enshrined. So if you'd like to take the family in to see it before you leave, why don't you? So Danny says, well, great, I'll take my photographer in, we'll take all our family photos, and then we'll leave. So that's what we do. And Fawcett Stadium and the Hall of Fame are two separate facilities. As we're leaving the hall, Danny gets in his limo and Joe Corrigan yells to Danny and says, hey, Dan, since 9/11, security's really tough and your photographer's credential was already scanned. So you might want to walk him back in because they're not going to let him back in. Danny looks out the window of the limo and says, Joe, it's not a big event unless Gallagher's sneaking in. He'll be fine. Well, tonight I'm doing the ultimate sneak in by sneaking in here. It's not about me. It's about the athletes. I was fortunate that 37 years ago, my brother Pat, who's here with me tonight, dropped me off at Edinboro University. And had someone told him then that you'd be coming back decades later, your brother would be under the spotlights, the chief of police would be on his right, a judge and a defense attorney on his left, he would have believed you. He would have said, yeah, that could happen, but he would have never believed it would have been like this. So I did go to Edinboro, and I was fortunate that I got into broadcast very quickly. And by my sophomore year, I got a call from Bud Elwell, the athletic director at Gannon University. He said, our head coach, Tom Chapman, wants you to be our play-by-play guy. He said, but I'm telling you, Gallagher, if anyone hears on our airwaves that you're an Edinboro student as the voice of Gannon basketball, this relationship will end. But as life would have it, Bud Elwell became not only one of my biggest fans, my biggest supporters, and greatest friends. And I truly wish he were here to see this tonight, because I guarantee you, with me standing up here, he is shaking his head. But I have Edinboro University to thank. You know, I tell people I spent 4 years fighting like hell to get out, and I've been spending the rest of my life trying to go back. Todd J. and Bob Shreve here with us tonight, and so instrumental, not just in Edinboro, but it's about our community. You know, if Mercyhurst or Gannon or Behrend has a big event, you'll see the other SIDs and athletic directors helping each other out. It's the way this community works. And I am so blessed to have in my life not only the people in this room, but the people I got to cover. Bill and Betsy Vorshak, who they introduced earlier, if there's a Hall of Fame in heaven, they get the first tickets in. Because I'm telling you, I know these people. They spend their life trying to figure out how they can help people. That's their goal in life. And that's what they do. And they're true Hall of Famers. I'm just a storyteller. I have to talk about my kids, my daughters, Katie and Megan, who are here. My daughter Nicole, not here with us tonight. And Katie is marrying a wonderful guy in December. He's from Buffalo. He's a medical and technical engineer, and his family are season ticket holders of the Buffalo Bills. She's not married yet, so she's not in the season ticket package. Well, last year, they're playing the Miami Dolphins. So Katie calls, and you need to know this about Katie. Katie's godfather is Dan Marino Sr. So Katie calls and says, do you think Danny would get me tickets for the game? Sure enough, Danny gets 4 seats, 2 rows behind the bench. Katie, her future father-in-law, her future husband, go pick up the tickets. Before they get in the game, I'm getting a message from her future father-in-law. So your daughter's been dating my son for 3 years, and it never comes up that Dan Marino's dad is her godfather? And I said, well, what did she say when you asked her that? She said she wasn't sure we would know who he was. And she was totally serious. But in my life, I've had a great opportunity. I was there when Michael Jordan hit the shot over Craig Elo in the NBA playoffs many, many years ago. I was there when Jerry Ott Park opened 24 years ago this week, and Jose Guillen hit the walk-off home run. They say it was a sellout, but I know for a fact that it wasn't a sellout. There were 2 people, a young couple, on their way to the game that went into labor as the gates opened. After the game, I left the game and went right to the hospital because I knew this was a story beyond the field. Well, I can tell you that baby girl was born 24 years ago this Friday. Her name is Abby Sutliff, and she's a nurse at Cleveland Clinic today. So 25 years when we celebrate the opening of Jerry Ott Park, it might be appropriate that we actually bring her back for the game she missed when we opened that beautiful ballpark. I was also there when the Miami Marlins brought a team to Erie for the first time. John Lynch, the general manager of the San Francisco 49ers, threw the first pitch because he was also a pitcher. And the story from that team wasn't that they were the first Marlins team, wasn't that John Lynch went on to greatness. The story from that team was that John Lynch met a guy who was another pitcher in the Marlins organization. He was on his last chance to try and catch on with the team. He never got through 7th grade. He couldn't read. John Lynch spent the summer of 1992 at Ainsworth Field in the bullpen teaching this young man to read, because that's the kind of guy that John Lynch is. And John Lynch is now one of the best general managers in all of football. And he's something that's special to Erie, and I think we forget that. But I was there. I got to see that. I was there for the last Strong Vincent basketball team that went all the way to the state championship. And the story beyond that story was the fact that their head coach at the end of the game, while wearing a microphone for me, went through the stands grabbing members of the community to invite them into that clubhouse to use basketball to unite the city of Erie, to bring us back together to see what's good in our world. I was lucky. I got to be there for so much. I got to see so many things, experience so many things. I get a lot of credit for actually inspiring some kids into the broadcast world. A lot of it is about Maria Sansone, who went on to Hollywood, co-hosted a show with Ryan Seacrest, is now at NBC in Boston. And when Maria Sansone was just 11, she wanted to be me. We were interviewing Michael Jordan, and at the end of the interview I said, Maria, maybe Mr. Jordan will sign your press pass. Maria said, I'm not going to do that because it's not professional. Mr. Jordan looked at me and said, apparently she should be teaching you. And he was right, because Maria was everything that I always wanted to be. I had the opportunity to inspire. I have a photographer now at the University of Central Florida named Becca Peterson. I met her on our beach here in Erie, PA, and she changed her major to become a photographer because of that encounter we had. Another photographer in Latrobe at St. Vincent College, who I met at a basketball game. So those things are great. But I'm going to do one last thing here tonight. I won't speak much longer. I know I can be long-winded. But I'm just going to tell one story. And I'm going to ask somebody to come up here while I tell it. Kelly Valentine, would you come up here? I'm going to tell you this girl's story because I haven't talked to her really for almost 3 decades. I inspired her, and it was one of the biggest regrets of my life. Regretted it so much that I didn't want to even talk to her, see her, run into her, almost pretended that she didn't exist. We met in 1985. I was a sportscaster, but on May 31st, the tornado rolled through Albion. Kelly Valentine and her cousins were members of the Northwestern softball team. Kelly Valentine was in a house where the house was destroyed. The neighbor's house was destroyed. There were injuries in the house. They had to climb out of the rubble and pull bodies of kids from their neighbors' homes. A couple of days later, they were to play in the PIAA playoffs, but they didn't have uniforms. There were rules that they needed their uniforms to play. Well, Gus Picardo stepped in and said, no, they're playing. Doesn't matter what they're playing in, they're playing. They lost, but a year later, they make it to the state championship. And by now, I've developed great relationships with this team. I'm young, I'm just starting in the business, and they invite me to go on the bus to the state championship. Well, on that trip, I'm a one-man band, so I made Kelly my reporter. Kelly decided after that encounter that she was going to do this. She was going to become a sportscaster. She was offered a full ride in softball at Northwestern University, one of the best journalism schools in the world, and also at IUP. She decided to stay close to home, went to IUP, and in 1993, she graduated. As a graduation gift, Dad gave her her first set of golf clubs. It was going to take some time because she was just starting her career, but she was going to pick up the game. Kelly then went to work at Channel 6 in Johnstown. She was on her way to being Mike Gallagher. What an honor for me. On a Saturday afternoon, she was heading out, as we all do, to cover high school football playoffs. And on her way to Altoona Stadium, another photographer she was traveling with hit a patch on a wet road and struck a tree. The photographer turned to Kelly and said, Kelly, are you okay? She said, I'm not okay. My arm's on the dashboard. I lost my arm. Now, because I inspired a kid to do what we do, her world has entered another major tragedy in life. She has lost her arm. During her recovery of that amputation, Dad was selling the golf clubs because she obviously wasn't going to be able to golf. She only has one arm. Well, Kelly told Dad, don't you dare sell those golf clubs. I'll beat you in a year. She did beat Dad in a year. Not only did she beat Dad in a year, she is now one of the best amputee golfers in the entire country. Kelly Valentine has the longest drive for an amputee. She hits it almost 240 yards when she tees it up with one arm. Now, because of her gift, she has become the tournament director of the World Amputee Games, which will be held at Pekin Peak in August. She'll compete, but she'll run that event because she's managed to turn life's tragedies into helping others. She did leave the broadcast business. She became a psychologist and a counselor. When I had the nerve to ask her to be here tonight, I got up the nerve to ask her why she changed to psychology and counseling. She said, I'd gotten so good at surviving tragedies that I thought I'd use what I learned to help others survive theirs. So ladies and gentlemen, it's not about me tonight. It's about these other inductees. It's about those athletes I've had the opportunity to cover. And it's my official apology to Kelly Valentine for ever inspiring you. I love you. Thank you.